Hi guys. Sorry, I missed the meeting again. I got off work at 7:30, which was just like 10 minutes ago. And I just walked in the door. I'm working like 60 hours a week right now, so it's really hard to get anything done other than work. Um, but along with the case study, I have my notes here. Um, I just printed off the assignment, and I figured it'd be best if I just read it so I don't ramble. I was going to start off by just stating like my opinion, and that is, I don't really feel like anyone was at blame here because Thomas Green, and then you have McDonald, and then you have Davis, and they each kind of did something a little crazy, but then there was just like a lot of drama involved as well. So I had three main situations that I analyzed. The first one is Davis is passive aggressive towards Green. And I was just thinking, like, he's a grown man, but is he a mature man? He knows what he's doing. He knows his chosen career. Maybe he's not as patient as he should be with Mr. Green. Something that a quote of his that I wanted to share is when Davis was talking to McDonald, he was complaining a little bit to Shannon. He said, in the senior market specialist position, he has to think outside the box. So maybe Mr. Green is at fault here in thinking that he like knew everything, even though he was brand new. And I feel like Davis was being like the parent in this situation, and Mr. Green was being the baby learning to walk. I feel like a lot of patience was needed on Mr. Davis's part. My second analysis that I thought a lot about was Green wants to climb the ladder of success. And so what I wrote for that is even the senior executives were impressed with Green and wanted to strengthen his relationship with the company. He attended meetings at the headquarters where McDonald worked, and she and Mr. Green had lots of similar interests, and they just kind of clicked and became friends. I feel that, however, McDonald was kind of biased, obviously, because who would not want to hire one of their friends? She said to Mr. Green after he was hired, I hope you compensate for your lack of experience by seeking out guidance from some of our more seasoned managers. And one of those more seasoned managers would have definitely been Davis, because he'd worked several years to get to the position that Green was just handed. So I can see how that would kind of almost make him jealous, maybe tick him off a little bit. And then my third situation that I analyzed was how McDonald has a favorite, and it's Mr. Green. She even told Green right after he was hired, she said, "You're getting an unusual opportunity with this promotion. Don't let me down." So I feel like McDonald is in the middle of the drama. And towards the end, Green even said like he doesn't know if McDonald would choose him or Mr. Davis, just because she was kind of caught in the middle. She wanted to be the nice person, but at the same time not choose a side, I feel. And maybe she felt a little guilt for even hiring Mr. Green in the first place, because the fact that his attitude just really sucked towards the end. And so we were supposed to choose a person to be like a third party. Well, for me to be like the third party and to give advice maybe. And so I wrote an action plan for, sorry, I keep getting texts from work. I wrote an action plan for McDonald, for Shannon. And I wrote it from her viewpoint, just because she wasn't really on anyone's side towards the end. Towards the beginning, she was obviously on Green's side. But so I can understand kind of the mess that she's in on being in the middle of all of the drama. So she made friends with a talented young professional, and then in a way was betrayed by his probably crudeness, because it's kind of rude to not don't know, like communicate properly with the team or in the workplace. And she hired Mr. Green because he was charismatic. But towards the end of it all, Green admitted to having a terrible mood about his work life. I feel like before she hires someone, she needs to get maybe a second or third opinion. And for example, like at the job I'm at now, I had an interview with 3 different managers in order to get it. I think maybe they should have like a process for that instead of, I know that that McDonald is at the very top, but maybe she should have had Davis interview Green before he was hired, or maybe one of the other managers because there's 3. I think just a second or third opinion would have always been better. And I feel like she shouldn't have given him such a big promotion, like right like that. I feel like you should kind of have to work up to a position that big. I mean, he's making $125,000 a year, and he's 28 years old. It sounds good for him, but I feel like that should probably be earned, not just handed. Something else I wrote is McDonald's needs to have a meeting with Green, and this would be like the ultimatum meeting. She could offer him a position as a market specialist, which would be like a downgrade, but you know, he could always work back up there. Or she could give him a chance to leave the company. I just don't feel like the position he's in right now, he's especially suited for. I feel like if he had more experience and knowledge, then he would just, I feel like he'd be more mature in handling the situations that he's put in, especially with Mr. Davis. And I feel like he would be quicker to accept other people's opinions as far as office politics go. Yeah, so those 2 options, he could either leave the company, so essentially quit, or he could be offered a marketing specialist position. And if you guys look at the very last page of the case, I actually printed it off. There's a picture of a graph, and it kind of shows like the hierarchy a little bit. So the market specialist would just be one position down from him. He was an accountant executive, so I feel like meeting him in the middle there should be reasonable. And then my other option, so I have just another idea, is that offer Green a job as the North American sales manager, who is currently Mark Washington, and move Mark Washington to be the company's senior market specialist. So kind of shift things up. And sometimes if you mix things up in the order of things, they can kind of fall back into place in a better way and run more smoothly, and it creates a different atmosphere. So maybe if Green wasn't working in the headquarters, if he was working somewhere in the North America headquarters or whatever, that space and that that gap would definitely help strengthen relationships between Mr. Green and Davis and McDonald. The risk with both of these is that Davis will get cocky and he could say, "I told you so," or "I knew you couldn't do it." Davis might get arrogant and rub it in Green's face. That's the risk, but that's kind of like an immature thing to do. So it's not really that big of a risk. But the other risk is that both men might get upset at McDonald's since she's stuck in the middle of it all, and they might both blame her and come at her. Good thing no one can fire her because she's the boss of the bosses. But those are just my opinions on this case. I thought it was a great case. Read it a few times, learned a lot about the importance of being honest in the workplace and the importance of being transparent. I was reading in The Speed of Trust the other day where it talked about that and how transparency can create more trust. And maybe Mr. Green and Mr. Davis and McDonald, if they would have came out like face to face instead of Davis going to McDonald, instead of Green going to McDonald's and making her be the middleman, if they had just talked face to face, I feel like things would have gone smoother. But yeah, that's just what I think. Bye guys, have a great week.